All right, everyone. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have a special guest tonight, Susi Vine. And Susi is with 3x Stress. Is that correct, Susi? And she's going to be talking to us tonight a little bit about how to deal with stress and anxiety in our businesses. And particularly everyone here tonight is in the lawn, landscape, or green industry. So I thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to go ahead and just give a quick intro of yourself and jump right in. If you need access to a screen share or anything like that, let me know as well.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I will in a few minutes here, and then you'll probably watch me try to shuffle windows. We'll see how this all comes together. But hello, everybody, and who I can see and who I can't, and folks who are catching the live stream or the replay. It's nice to virtually meet you. I'm Susi Vine. I created 3x Less Stress. Coming out of what I saw was really the root of so many different types of disease. My mom was a nurse, labor and delivery nurse for 40 years, worked the night shift, which the World Health Organization now recognizes is a really significant contributor to cancer, actually, and other health issues. Other countries around the world are acknowledging that we need to better compensate our workers who have to work nights. So there's a lot of different ways that stress comes in. I'll try not to lose my hand to my virtual background too many times. And I've done a lot of different kinds of work. I grew up in Central Illinois. I'm a farm girl, born and bred. So those are my roots, but now I live in San Diego, California, and I do massage and body work in addition to my coaching work, helping people dial down the sneaky stressors, the stress we don't need to be carrying because it does compromise our resilience and capacity to respond more easily, and to take a look at how we can have different strategies and how we show up to stress. Because through my work and building tools as I'm working with clients, I found the field of positive psychology. And there's a lot of different ways in which we hear perspective is so important, but it's really powerful. And we'll dive into that in just a few minutes, how perspective can change our physical response to stress. So knowledge is power. All that is true. So I'll share some information tonight, and I do have a resource. So if you're able to grab the link out of the chat, you can do that. We might be able to post that too, where it's streaming, or this can go out with the replay too. So this is just a link to see this document online, or you can download it. So don't feel like you need to take notes. A lot of what I'm going to say is kind of included in this handout too. So you can just take it in, and I'll probably be speaking pretty quickly. But if you have any questions, please put those in the chat. Or as I'm sharing screen, I might not see you raise your hand. So the chat might be the easiest way to go. And I'll try to get all my information out there, and we will have time for questions at the end.
Awesome.
Sound good?
Yes.
Sounds great.
All righty. So let me find the button to go ahead and, okay, got that link. I'm just going to do away with this other window because I know it's not going to play nicely. And share my screen.
We are ready. Should be able to.
Perfect. Yes.
Okay.
Actually, there we go.
We gotcha.
And is it just this window, or is it the whole screen?
It's the whole screen. We got,
That's
you got
not
all
what
your
you wanna
background.
see. That's dizzying. That'll cause stress.
Yes.
All right, so let's try that a little bit better. We got just the keynote now. I'm bilingual. I switched from PC to Mac. So, you know, it's a little bit of a dance, but is that a little bit better?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. So, and let me open up the chat again. Like I said, if you're not driving or multitasking, I'd love to hear from you all and get a little bit of input. First of all, I'd love to know, you know, when we talk about stress and anxiety, obviously spring is a busy season in your industry. Coming out of it, we've got a couple of weeks until it's officially summer, but even summer, I'm sure, is pretty hectic. So I'd love to hear what you think about there. Maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, how much stress do you feel in your operations, or do you feel like it's an issue, or do you feel like this is something that you're putting some energy and attention to, and you're making a little bit of headway? Stress was really kind of coming to front of mind before the last few years, but certainly with COVID and such a dramatic shift in the way that everything was operating, it's really I'm going to shift you guys again. Sorry. It's really come even more so to the forefront, and we'll take another look. So this is a quick overview of where we will go this evening. We'll take a look at what's the story behind stress, but these are some numbers that I think really relate the impact. So a lot of times I talk with corporate teams about burnout. So some of these slides come from that presentation that I like to share with them, which is why the number about burnout specifically is here. And we're taking a look at that. But 73%, almost 3/4 of us report feeling anxious regularly. And the number on the right, 45% of people feel burned out. That was a number from early in COVID, early 2020. I've heard, without being able to see or verify the numbers, but I've heard in news reporting here in the San Diego area, where about 60% of people are self-reporting burnout. That's really significant. And when you are your business, or you're the driving force in your business, or you're leading teams, it's really hard to rally and muster and show up the way that you want to and do the work that you want to do. And you certainly don't want to be losing that spark, because we spend so much of our energy and attention doing work. So these are some numbers too, just to kind of normalize it, right? Because everyone experiences stress. And I don't call myself a stress management coach, although I have that certification. I prefer stress transformation, because the way that we perceive it, as I've already said, is so important. And we have a lot more power there than we might recognize. As I was saying, 3/4 of us experience stress symptoms. As I already mentioned, anxiety. So many people recognize that negative impact. Stress is interfering with their family or personal time, because it carries over, right? And one of the reasons that I'm passionate about stress is because I could see how it impacted relationships. And we are social creatures, and we really need that social connection. And when work stress is impacting our personal lives and our relationships, that's really an indicator that we need to take control of the situation and look for solutions so that we can come back into control there. The Merriam-Webster dictionary, just to get a little technical, but basically what we're looking at are the factors that cause bodily or mental tension. And these factors may cause disease. We all, I'm sure, have heard of stress being related to cardiovascular disease. There's also direct relations to stress and diabetes. We'll take another look into that in a minute, but basically stress hormones like cortisol spike our blood sugar so that we have fast energy to respond, right? Biologically, we are wired to respond to stress so that we can survive. We need that energy to run from the tiger in the bush. And so what we do with those hormones, that energy, that biological response is really important, because if we're not completing that stress cycle, we're carrying that with us. And then we're never relieving that load, so we don't have the resilience to meet stress the next day when we start all over again. All righty, so I had to include the tiger icon there. And I'll come back to this a couple of times. Stress has its function and its benefits. It helps us learn, right? So I like to compare it to cholesterol. We all went through the low-fat, non-fat diets, and now we're recognizing that our nerves need that support. Our body needs cholesterol and fats. It makes up our cells, right? It lines or protects our nerves. So stress has its benefits. It helps us grow. It helps us learn. It really imprints those lessons. There's a reason that they say that bad experiences are like Velcro and good experiences are like Teflon. Again, it goes back to our wiring. If our brains remembered every difficult situation or activity, then we weren't so likely to repeat it, right? And so that sympathetic nervous response is what I'm talking about. And so you might be familiar with it, when you have a difficult conversation with a customer, or when you might be triggered working with a team member or something is going on. You might notice, if you can be aware of your physical sensations, that your breath is changing. Your heart might be racing or feel like it's pounding. Stress interrupts our digestion, which is really important to understand, because a lot of people, especially here in the US, have digestive issues. And again, that's biological response. When we need to respond, we need to perhaps run and protect ourselves, that fight or flight response. That moves circulation from our digestive organs, from our core organs to our muscle groups, right? So we've got that energy to run, but our digestion is interrupted. That happening chronically can lead to a host of other issues. So when we start to see the connections, it makes more sense. But until we can connect those dots, all of these different situations, I always have indigestion, I can't sleep, I have headaches, they seem to be unrelated. But it really helps to get perspective. So what changed is not our biology. Unfortunately, our lifestyles have. So suddenly, instead of being triggered by certain events out in nature or the occasional confrontation, now we've got alarms going off, reminders going off, a schedule that we're trying to meet, customer expectations to meet. And all of that keeps resetting the stress load without us having the opportunity to clear the cache, if you will. And so when that starts to add up, some of those symptoms that so many people report are trouble with sleeping and insomnia or fatigue, headaches, the indigestion that I was just talking about, lack of focus, and then feeling frustrated because we feel like we're not making the progress that we want to. And then, as I already mentioned, stress lays the foundation for so many types of disease. So this is just really, I want to bring home how important it is that when we see opportunities to make changes or to change our perspective or to make little changes, I'm not talking about radical lifestyle shifts, but those things that we can choose to do differently, it's so worthwhile because it helps us reset that stress balance or the bucket. A lot of people find it helpful to think of a bucket where, not having the best quality food because you're running behind, you're eating some, fast food, and then you short yourself an hour or 3 on sleep because you've got to meet demands. And then you've got maybe an argument that keeps rolling around in your head. Those stressful incidences are filling that bucket and you have less capacity at the top for resilience. So hopefully that stress bucket analogy kind of helps to make it clear. But as I'm sure you might have experienced, especially if you have performed in team sports or done talks and presentations, that experience of stress is what helps move us into higher performance. That flow state that elite athletes experience, that highly trained individuals have when perhaps they're writing and they get into flow and they just turn out chapters without struggle, right? We move out of that kind of slower thought process and we really, it just is second nature. Time falls away. We don't even really experience emotions in this flow state. And that comes from having a moderate level of stress. So again, our goal is not to have 0. It's just to know how to utilize it and know how to reset as we need to so we can be refueled and restored. I'm short on time. I'm sorry. I can't see my clock. So tell me when I'm short on time so I can keep a track on that. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate you. So good stress, also called eustress. We talked about the benefits there. So let's take a look at the power of perspective, as I've already alluded to. In research, stress can be enhancing or debilitating. And I don't know if you've ever thought of it that simply, but basically researchers find people fall into one of 2 camps. If you know right off, if anybody wants to volunteer, you can share that. Also, though, all things in moderation. There are certainly those adrenaline junkies that might create stressful situations because without even recognizing it, they thrive off of stress, the adrenaline and cortisol. All things in moderation, right? We don't want to be relying on stress to drive results, but we also can move out of that perception that stress is debilitating. There's a link in the resources on the last page of the handout with some videos. And they did research at, I believe those videos are by Columbia, but Yale and Harvard have been very active in positive psychology research. And basically they showed students 2 videos illustrating the same symptoms of stress we were just talking about and saying, so these symptoms are detrimental, they ruin your focus, they hinder your performance, they cause physical issues, or these symptoms are designed to help you perform better, to move you out of danger, to make you fully present and focused. Perspective is everything. And when they had the students view different videos and then put them into a stressful situation, making a presentation in front of a critical audience, they were measuring the physical response. And the participants said they felt less stressed after watching how stress can be enhancing, watching these videos, just getting that perspective. And they actually also had a very different cardiac response. They didn't have that constriction of blood vessels that we often experience when we have that sympathetic stress, fight or flight. We feel like we need to spring into action. So perception can physically change our response to stress just that easily. And so how can we use that to our advantage? And then that nature versus nurture question, really, how can we change? You know, if we are perhaps our parents were really triggered by stress, or one was, and we feel like stress is always overwhelming us, setting us back, holding us back. Can we change that perspective? They did find that just by viewing those videos, the students had different reactions. So we can change. Sometimes that awareness is like a light switch. Oftentimes, like habits, we need to keep coming back to these choices and recognizing how we can make shifts. So be gentle with yourself. And I already said, throw you lots of information tonight. This isn't do everything all at once kind of a thing, because radical lifestyle changes don't often stick. If one thing goes with you, try to implement that. And then as that creates a little bit of space, one other thing, you know, bring in one other change and see how that supports you. So different sources of stress, 3x less stress comes from these three aspects of stress: physical, emotional, and environmental. And so basically, and I have these on the handout as well, looking at how these can influence us. And you can take a look at, I don't like to say, you know, all or nothing. So limit some aspects and support others. I might have even put those slides in twice because I was putting this together today. So we'll come back around to it. But certainly in your work and in the work that I used to do backstage work in theaters. I worked in scene shops. We used a lot of chemicals in our work, and that ultimately started to affect my health. So I'm really passionate about environmental stressors. And air quality is recognized by the EPA as one of our primary human health concerns. So even though a lot of your work has you outdoors, don't forget that in our homes, that layer of dust has particulate matter that can be hindering our breathing. So just be really aware. And if that's something you want to dive more deeply into, I'll share information. And in the resource, I have 30-minute strategy calls available completely free. So if you have questions and you want to get together one-on-one, reach out and we'll see what we can put together in the calendar so I can answer your questions if we don't get to them tonight. And then, as I also mentioned too, in that emotional aspect, we are such social creatures, and missing out on that social connection can really start to add up in other ways. So a lot of times when we're under stress, we don't want to reach out and engage other people, bring them down, but it's even more important to reach out to others and be connected, because we feel heard and understood. They can help us have perspective in what is going on. And when we hear other people and offer perspective, we feel better. It's one of the ways that we are wired. We feel better when we support other people. So when we take that opportunity to exchange support, we're helping other people feel better too. So it's one of those kind of reflexive things I encourage people to try to reach beyond. We feel like we want to seclude ourselves, but please try not to. So that's all the heavy stuff. And I love this picture. I'm sure very few of you get to lay down in a field of grass and relax and enjoy yourself. That must be nice, right? But it's a nice feeling. I love the energy that this image evokes of having this time, this opportunity for ourselves. And we can help ourselves have that by having systems that empower us and help us take back time, ways that we can manage our space, indoors or out, and again, those social systems. I'll just keep coming back to that. It's one of my favorites. In terms of time, there's a lot of different time management tools. Obviously, when you are taking care of customers, they really can manage your schedule. But a lot of times, things that keep us super busy don't need to. And when I first was introduced to this Eisenhower Matrix, it was really a light bulb moment for me, because a lot of times what moves our business forward might not be urgent, but is really important. And the urgent things and unimportant urgent things can bump that out of the way. So think about how you can put a little time in your schedule to attend to the important and not urgent things. So those projects that can really help move the needle can actually get done. So yeah, if you want to grab a screenshot, I love this. I guess technically it's called the Eisenhower Matrix. I believe Stephen Covey uses it a lot too. So a lot of people credit him with that. But I like to put, my e-news on my list, my INUs, important, not urgents, and have a little category where I let those add up. And then in terms of space, again, you guys might be in mobile offices, your truck might be your office, but when we all started working from home, a lot of us kind of knit together a little workstation and a lot of times in a shared space. And that can be difficult to keep organized, to keep tidy. Just as much to say, my office certainly doesn't look like this. I've already divulged I'm using a virtual background, but organization can really help. Mental clutter kind of feeds off of external clutter. So whatever you can do to really give yourself a space, a zone where you can feel a little more calm and organized when you finally get to sit down and get to some of that paperwork can really be beneficial too. Also, in that physical stress column, do what you can to have an ergonomic workstation, because again, you're up and moving around a lot in the nature of your work, but even having a computer screen that's a couple of degrees to one side, having the keyboard at a wrong angle can really add up over time. In my experience as in doing body work and massage, a lot of that causes real big problems, elbows, shoulders, carpal tunnel, and who has time for that? So think about, if you have someone who can check your workstation and take a little look at the ergonomics, it's well worth the time to do a little bit of tweaking there. Maybe that goes in the important and not urgent list. And again, the social connections that support. One of the things I like to talk about too is, especially in a networking group like this is terrific because you can share ideas and bounce questions and find out what's working with other people in their businesses. Do try to keep the social support positive. Sometimes misery loves company and we can get a little bit negative, and do try to be solution oriented. Sometimes, again, we are drawn to the negativity. It's just part of the way that we're wired. But if we can break ourselves out of that cycle and be solution oriented, that really helps. One other thing that I want to share too is when we are positive, when we are feeling positive, and this is one of my favorites too, I'm a big positivity advocate, we have more perspective for solutions. When we're stressed, we're very focused and drilled down and narrow, looking just exactly at what is the problem. When we can shift, when we can make time to play, when we can break out of that, we can see solutions that are not visible when we're really drilled in on the problem at hand. So I'll get to my play in a moment, but are there any questions? How am I on time, Adam?
We are 25 minutes in.
Ooh, okay. So I won't spend too much time on this. This information is in the resource. So the 3 foundations of health: quality food, getting sleep, and activity. Again, important but not urgent. But I do recommend scheduling these things for yourself, because if it's not on our calendar, other people bump them off of our calendar. And these are really the fundamentals. So do try to protect this and take care of yourself. These charts are in the resource too. So if you join late, I'll share that link again. And then calling in more peace. Again, as I just mentioned, play helps us get a broader focus and have more access to creative solutions. So it's a great way to hit reset, to empty the load in that stress bucket. Again, it feels frivolous. Who has time to put play in their schedule? But the benefits are profound. Examining the source of the stress and looking for solutions. I share some tips on this in the handout as well. But one of the things that I really love to encourage people to do is to pause and to pivot. This is a really powerful stress response. If you can practice it and then have that available to you. So practice it maybe when you're driving and somebody cuts you off. And before you yell at them, start gesturing, whatever your normal response is, pause and think about, what am I responding to? Am I triggered because of this conversation I just had? Am I triggered because they're a moron? Probably yes. But what else has got my emotions triggered? And maybe what's going on with them? That's a powerful perspective, right? Maybe they're late for something. Maybe they're in a crisis. I can back off. It doesn't ruin my day. And then pivot. So after you pause and get curious, what am I responding to? Is it current? Is it an old situation that's triggered? Where do I want to pivot to? What kind of outcome do I want to create? That pause and pivot. So again, if you practice it when you're driving in a less pressing situation, it's a little easier to have that tool when you're in a conversation, answering a phone call, really in the thick of it with somebody. Accepting what is within our control and what is not. A lot of people I see putting all of their energy into frustrations of things that are outside of our control. when we look at what we can change, the little things that we have control over, sometimes it feels like a short list, we start to have more confidence in our ability, we start to feel more empowered, and we start to see more things that we can shift. So that's a really helpful perspective too, what's within our control and learning how to let go of what is outside of it. Celebrating again is important. There's a little bit of research information in the handout from Sean Acor. We tend to put happiness on the other side of reaching our goals. And if we can celebrate our progress, map out a project, put some milestones in, look at how you're going to celebrate, and then make reminders or put that on the calendar. It boosts your team's morale. It keeps you on track because a lot of times that ultimate goal gets moved. It changes shape, it gets pushed out. We never reward ourselves. And if we're not doing that, it's really easy to get overwhelmed, off track, and frustrated. And then finally, exhale. Remember to breathe. Even 2 minutes of mindful breathing, just tune into your breath, breathe down into your belly. That's moving the diaphragm. It slows your heart rate. It helps you come back to center. And it's a powerful reset you can use throughout the day. You could use it before work, after your lunch, before you head back into work. Start to get into that habit of taking a minute to tune in to your breath. So self-care isn't selfish. That's my poster child right there. Make yourself a nice cup of tea or cool iced tea, a little sun tea to refresh. These positivity tips are at the end there. And then I will close with this slide. This information is also in the resource. And as I mentioned, I have a free 30-minute strategy call. Just reach out to me by email, on Facebook, and let's connect and answer your questions, because I really hate to see stress become such an obstacle. We think it's just a way of life. Work is a 4-letter word, but we don't have to settle for that. And I know that Adam said there are some definitely specific topics too. So if there's specific situations or questions you want to throw at me, by all means, because I know I didn't cover everything.
No settling.
Awesome.
I love that. Yeah, no settling. That's our rule. No settling.
Susie, so is stress and anxiety, it can change with age, right? How it affects a person. So whether a person's 18 years old or 45 years old, they're going to have a different outcome of dealing with certain things that approach them, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that comes from life experience. Again, sometimes when we react, we're triggered by previous situations. So we might just have more of those that have us triggered, but also our physical resilience, right? The amount of rest that we're getting, because when we sleep, that helps us clear the cache. It files and sorts the memories from the day before. So we have access to that when we need it. So having the sleep, having the nutrition, all of that, which starts to slide, our physical resilience drops as we get older. So we have to pay more attention to our well-being so we can recover from stress as easily as we did when we were younger.
Is it genetic? Can it be passed down from generation to generation?
It can be. And so that's that question I love. Is it nature versus nurture, how I respond to stress? We definitely learn patterns from our parents. Maybe you had one of each, which is great. You have a little bit of both. Maybe you had 2 worriers. And that can be a lot more retraining, a lot more finding center and being mindful in how you want to respond to stress. I won't even say genetically, epigenetically, even in utero, the stress that a mother is in affects the development of a fetus. And so when a mother is in stress while pregnant, it fosters the development of those organs in the body, of the limbic system. Like there isn't as strong early development of the prefrontal cortex where we think about how we want to respond. That lizard brain, if you will, is stronger faster because those stress hormones are impacting the way that, so there's a lot of generational stuff, right? That our parents, that their parents, we don't have to go far back to find some difficult family history. So giving ourselves that grace really helps too. Recognizing that, some people might be able to shrug it off. Not everybody can. And so if you can't, that's certainly not any kind of downfall where you are. And there's even connections. I've talked with a marriage and family therapist who specializes in micronutrient therapy, because there are diet deficiencies. Sometimes, our body doesn't use all of the resources as well as it could. So there are peptides or amino acids that can support serotonin to support a certain kind of depression, or dopamine for a different kind of depression. So never assume that I'm depressed, I either have to be medicated or not. There's so many things we are learning about why our bodies are the way they are, respond the way they are, and how we can start to shift. And even feeling happier more often. The positivity practice that's in the resource, I include that because they found that gratitude practice people do, writing 3 things we're grateful for every day, literally rewires our brain through neuroplasticity to put more value on experience where we feel gratitude. So when we experience them in life, our brain is like, oh, she's going to ask me about that later, so I better remember this. And we recognize those. So we start to turn the tables on that. Bad experiences are like Velcro and good experiences are like Teflon. We make them stickier.
Got it. So like what stresses me out is the unknown.
I thought you were going to say your wife.
Well, that too. No, but it really is the unknown. It's, and I kind of wrote down a few things here, and it's the unknown. It's the weather changes when there's incoming snowstorms as we do snow plowing and de-icing. And it's not that we haven't been able to handle everyone 99% perfect, but it's the unknown of when do we call the crews in to get started? Are we calling them in too early because we want them to have as much amount of rest as possible? Are we going to meet the criteria of having parking lots opened up by certain time frames in the morning? So there's that. It's the unknown of, is an employee going to call in sick? And then one of the things as well on a lawn care side of things is, once again, weather changes. When we are maintaining properties such as residential lawn care, commercial lawn care, if there's 3 days of rain in the forecast, for me personally, the stress is, just getting those reoccurring projects done. No issues with stress on landscaping installation projects, fertilization, because that stuff really, at least in my company, it can be pushed back, but having to do the weekly tasks, like I said, back to the mowing, back to the snow removal, that type of stuff, that's, I realize, what stresses me out. What can I do to help cope with that is what I would like to see some ideas that you might have on.
Yeah, especially like you're talking about, the rain is coming, you still have the same number of lawns to be mown, and now you have fewer days to get it done. And what do you do with your team? You don't want to put them into overtime. And so those are difficult to plan for. You can, drawing back on your experience, how have we managed it before? What worked? What clients have flexibility? I think communication is a really powerful tool. And a lot of times as business owners, we think, we have to keep it all together and just let people know when we have an answer, right? But especially if you've been able to cultivate a team that you can have communication with. So for example, when are we going to send out the snow trucks and, de-ice? They know, and they're probably watching the weather too. They totally know what choices you're having to make. And so, with that flexibility too, if you relate to them, hopefully you're able to cultivate a team where there's a little bit of flexibility, right? Where you're not always, sweating the overtime reaction because you've got to deliver the results. But I do think it can help. The unknown can be big and hairy and kind of take on its own life. And so in the resource, I have just kind of a 3-column example, and you can do an exercise called mental balancing. My husband's a bit of a ruminator. He likes to worry. And then one thing is resolved and it's fill in the blank. What else are we going to worry about? So what I like to kind of work through is, okay, what are the worst case scenarios? What is the worst that's going to happen? Just write it all out, right? Stop trying to hold it away because it's just on loop in the back of your mind. Of course, you're going to be mulling over that. What's all the worst case scenarios? What's the best case scenarios, right? The sleet falls exactly when they say it's going to. I got my crew on standby. They're expecting on when to go out. The weather is the weather. And everybody knows the weather is the weather. And, the clients understand, and we've been through this with them before. They know they can count on me. If there's going to be a delay, I'll communicate that to them, and we'll mitigate as best we can. Worst case scenario, best case scenario, everything goes according to plan or better. And then what's the most likely outcome? Because once you have all of that down and it's not just racing around your head, it's easier to be a little bit more objective and say, okay, what's most likely? And again, most likely with weather, especially back in the Midwest, I know well, boy, that's, if anybody had that crystal ball, that would be $1 million idea. But, and certainly I think in working with your teams, sometimes, like I said, we feel like we have to have all the answers, that we can never express, I just don't know. But, from your experience, from what you've been able to draw from and what you can forecast, and there's going to be gray areas. And so sometimes we hold ourselves to unreasonable expectations. When we communicate to others, we can understand they're right on the same page with us. They totally get it.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
No, you just made a thought pop in my head though. But a lot of times I think it's not that you don't know, but that you haven't made a decision yet. So there's, some certainty in you're going to know what to do, but you haven't necessarily decided it yet.
Because maybe that choice isn't the one you wish you had to make.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and open it up to any questions that our participants may have. So if you have a question, go ahead and please unmute yourself. Hopefully there's not everybody unmutes all at once if there's a whole lot of questions, but please go ahead and unmute yourself and feel free to ask Susie a question. If maybe you have any scenarios or anything like that you want to just bring up.
Definitely. And thank you for that generous offers you made to everyone, Susie, of the 30-minute session. That's very awesome.
Yes, thank you.
So take advantage of that, everyone. Very kind of you, Susie.
We'll wait another 30 seconds if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask Susie a question.
Funny, Lincoln. I like that in the chat.
Yeah, Lincoln, that's funny stuff. That stresses Adam out. Lincoln says, you want to read what he said?
Does anyone else hate how often Sarah is 100% correct?
I'm not sure if you're being sarcastic.
No, I mean, you just you're good at hitting the nail on the head. And
Well, thank you.
Adam, I feel like Adam has a lot of the same
Poor Adam.
that you have.
Poor Adam.
Yeah, and then and you're right. Like, we know what we're going to end up doing. We just don't make a decision. And it's the same stuff we were talking about yesterday. No, but this is all kind of overwhelming because I don't think you said anything that I've never heard before. But it's just it's spring in the landscape business. I don't have time to go to my bookshelf and reread Stephen Covey books. I don't have time
I don't have time to update my to-do list, right?
I don't know. I mean, I just don't, it's unfathomable, how we're ever going to get caught up and how I'm ever going to get to a point where I sleep again. But it's I know all the things I have to do. That's what's really frustrating, is knowing what needs to happen and not being able to do it.
I think for me, it gets to a point of acceptance that there's so much that I find important, and the urgency gets me kind of stressed out, but it's a little bit of acceptance that I'm going to have just as much to do tomorrow, and the next day I'm going to have a lot to do. So I might as well find some peace with myself and accept that I'm doing the best that I can.
Sarah doesn't take a break from work. So Wednesday morning, she was up at 5 a.m. in her car, in the back seat, in the garage while it was in the car, working on her computer and taking phone calls at 5 a.m.
That's because we had summer school. It's summertime and we had friends over. So
she was trying to be quiet in the garage in her car while working. Everybody else was still sleeping.
Oh, it's hard to find that cone of silence.
Right.
And thank you, Lincoln. I appreciate, right? And I totally get it. And I created an online event last November that I self-produced. I interviewed 12 people and had live workshops, and it was amazing. It was everything I wanted it to be. And I didn't feel like I could job things out because I was doing it on a shoestring budget, and I burned myself out. So knowing is not doing, and I have to keep coming back to it too. I think Sarah's point is really important. The list is never going to be completely done. We have a way of holding ourselves to really high standards, and there are things that don't get done, and we just keep on moving, right? They'll stay on the list. Maybe there'll be a holiday when we can get 2 of those things done. I know the sun is shining, the grass is growing. There's always work to be done. Winter, and that's when you fix all the machinery, right? But what I will say is this, however you can help to fortify yourself. So, right, we should eat nourishing food. Great. Who has time to shop produce and keep it fresh in the house when you're working around the clock and you're up before dawn to get there as soon as the grass is dry, right? So greens powder is amazing. And then we get some of those phytonutrients that we need to help address the inflammation that we get from pushing our bodies really hard and from not getting enough sleep. So look for those kinds of solutions, the quick solutions, you know, a protein bar. I was just introduced to one that has greens as well as protein. So that's great, because then there's 2 things that I need to resolve in one go. Staying hydrated is really important, although I've also had jobs where bathrooms are hard to come by. And then you're like, no, it's fine. I don't need to drink water. I'll catch up on that later. It's not going to support us the way that we need to be supported. So there are little stakes we can make even when we're running full tilt, dawn to dusk and beyond. And as hard as it is to hold on to our sleep, it really, really, really helps. Again, support our immunity. Fortunately, I'll say to you guys, I'm sure, like myself in different phases of my career, my fitness plan is in the job description. So you don't have to make time to go to the gym. You're out moving, you're in and out of your truck, you're moving around all day. You know, we don't need to go to CrossFit training in order to be quote unquote healthy, active level. Our bodies were just made to move. And so if we're walking around through the day, we're moving, and that helps. After a really stressful conversation, activity is a great way to metabolize those hormones of stress, get that cortisol and adrenaline out of your system, right? Fight or flight for a reason. If we can fly, if we can get some physical activity after we're triggered, really helps to hit the reset button. My little cherub.
Any other last questions? If so, please unmute yourself one last time.
Did you have any more questions?
No, I
You had
don't.
a little list going.
Yeah, and it was just about, I wanted to mention about the unknowns. That's what stresses me out. It's the unknown. Another example was the other day, you know, we priced a simple weed pulling job for a residential customer that we normally would never take on, but the lady had it done the year before, and we went ahead and did it. I get an email saying that after the job was done, she wasn't happy with how it looked, and I was just literally like shaking a little bit. I was like so stressed out about, why did we even do that again for her? Why didn't we say no in the first place? You know, I'm the first person that tells people to say no.
This is true.
I need to take some of my own medicine sometimes and listen to that more. But you know, stuff like that is just the unknown and really gets a person worked up, at least myself. So
Well, there's always a known, and there's always work to do, like Ed said. So we have to learn to deal with it. And Susie, thank you for giving us some ideas of how to deal with it. And you know, it's not all bad.
It's doable.
yes.
We can do it. And truly be kind to yourselves, right? Like I said, there's a whole laundry list in that resource. If there's one thing that stands out to you, that's a perfect place to start, because as we can bring in one tiny thing, that brings us a little bit of resilience or capacity, a little bit more bandwidth to tackle one more thing. And I love the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. He says in many of his interviews, every choice you make is a vote for the person that you want to be. right? Every choice is a vote, but every choice isn't like a deal breaker. Just recognize we get to keep making choices. We get to keep coming back to it and moving ourselves towards the direction we want to be. So hopefully that relieves a little bit of that finality. I know people who are driven to run a business and take good care of their customers, heart-led people, service-oriented people, we're predisposed to experiencing burnout. So recognize that and be kind with yourself. And like you were just saying, Adam, you know, we want to give and deliver. We want to say, okay, I can do this for you. And I've had that experience. Those clients where we concede a little bit, we grant a favor. Ooh, boy, it comes back in spades.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a lesson.
Yeah.
You've got your answer ready for next year.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate your time. And if you guys want to reach out to Susie, she has her information here, or it's, like I said, the website is 3xlessstress.com. Thanks, Susie.
Thanks,
That,
everyone.
just type in my email there. So that's in the chat. You can save that in the chat as well. Would love to connect, answer any questions via email too. Keep it super simple. Thank you all.
Have a good night. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.